So Childnet's a children's charity, and we've been around next year, we've been around for 30 years actually. And our focus, our mission statement is to help make the internet a great and safe place for children. And we are absolutely working to support children and young people to give them the information and skills they need so they can make good decisions whenever and wherever they're using technology. So as Steve was saying, this is absolutely about the prevention side of online safety, but as well as in that preventative messaging, we need to be making sure we're giving young people the knowledge of where to go and who to talk to if they have a problem, so that there is covering that element too. So that's Childnet, who we are. We're a children's charity. We work collaboratively with two other charities, one that Steve mentioned is going to speak at the end of the week, SWGFL, and also the Internet Watch Foundation. And there's three charities. We form something called the UK Safer Internet Centre, just to be really, really confusing. There's a Safer Internet Centre in every EU country, and for this partnership, we look after the UK Safer Internet Centre. And one of the things we do for that is to organise Safer Internet Day, which I will be mentioning. In terms of Childnet and how we work in the education space. We visit schools and preschools across the country, talking to children from as young as 3 up until the end of school, end of secondary. And we talk to parents and carers and school staff. And it is that working on the ground with children that gives us the insight that we value and need for the work that we do. From that, we try to raise funds from different places to create educational materials. And on that website, childnet.com/resources, you can find a wealth of materials covering a whole range of different issues and aspects of children's online lives for children of different ages, for children, those working with children with special educational needs, talking about difficult subjects, because sometimes there are some difficult things that we need to cover that can feel outside of our comfort zone, but still it's really important our voice is heard, so we can support young people with issues like online pornography and such like, and recognizing we need to be supporting parents and carers through this journey too. So we work in the education space. We also work in the policy space. We work collaboratively with industry and government, and I chair a working group of helplines and police in the UK, and we meet every 6 weeks. We always say that online safety is a fast-moving environment, and we meet every 6 weeks to discuss what we're seeing to make sure that we're keeping our finger on the pulse of risk and harm faced by children and young people in this country. So that's kind of the policy space. And then underpinning education and underpinning policy, we have youth voice, which is, we want young people's voice to be heard in policy. And we've taken young people to Downing Street, to UN meetings, to talk to tech companies and more, because that's an experience that is really important, that is heard. And we also try and encourage youth voice in our education work. And we have a youth advisory board that helps counsel the work that we do. But also we know that young people care about online safety and they want to make a difference. And we have programs to train young people up to have agency in their school communities so they can talk to peers or parents or school staff and others. And one of the reasons that is so important, this is a great quote, and I use this a lot. It's from a 14-year-old member of our youth advisory board, and he gave it in a keynote speech at our Safer Internet Day in 2023. Every generation's experience of youth is different, and ours is framed by social media. He brilliantly articulated why it's so important that we are listening to young people when we're talking about children and their online lives, that we recognize that their experience is different to ours, and they will have a different experience that it's important for us to hear. But I also have great belief in the power of young people's voice, and we've got some data that backs up why youth voice is so important. So this was a survey that we did as part of the UK Safer Internet Centre a couple of years ago now, 2023, or last year. Young people really value the online safety lessons they have at school, but 30% of those young people, and this was 8 to 17-year-olds who answered the survey, felt that they felt that those lessons don't allow them to talk about the online issues that they are worried about. And so again, it's about thinking about, well, youth voice is important to make sure that the conversations and that we're having are really relevant to the needs of children and young people. And we've developed some resources for people who are interested in that and have worked with young people in that way to try and help make things hit the target more. Here, this is the resources you can find on the Childnet website, where it's quite straightforward. You have kind of a list of potential online issues, online harms that young people could face, and the young people can add to that list. Might have bullying and catfishing and grooming and misinformation and inappropriate content or whatever. The young people can add to that list, and then you look to get the young people to plot those risks on this graph, and you can see that very small in that right-hand corner, where you have the severity of harm. So the young people have to say how serious this particular risk is, and then they map it along a frequency. And so they will be charting things which are most harmful and most frequent against those to be most harmful and less frequent, and so on and so forth. And that can be a really useful way to articulate the issues which young people are facing online, because it's not always apparent, and it's important that we are trying to listen in that way. So just to share that kind of practical note here. Now, I wanted to pick up three things really in this conversation. One was to talk about to talk about some current issues that are top of mind. And one is sextortion, and the other one is generative AI. And the third thing I wanted to talk about was Safer Internet Day. So I'm gonna trundle on because I haven't got much time, and start talking about the issue of sextortion. This probably is on your radar already. I hope so. I mentioned I chair this early warning working group. Helplines have been talking to me about this for the last 2 years. This is when it first started to happen, particularly financially motivated sexual extortion, FMSE, and this is the language that the National Crime Agency has started to use. It doesn't have to be financially motivated. There can be sextortion by somebody blackmailing somebody to share more images, rather than to share to gain money. And if there's a broad split, then financially motivated sextortion is more boy targeted, and for more sexual content is more directed towards girls, although it's not exclusive. And but in broad terms, helplines are reporting things in this direction. And so a lot of focus has been around this is international criminal gangs targeting boys primarily for money. So there'll be a contact made that a girl will drop into the friend group and chat to a boy, be flirty, share an image. The boy and says share one back. He shares one back, and then there's a demand for money. And it wasn't a girl at all. It was an international criminal gang based somewhere in another part of the world. And here's some data from the IWF, and it's there. You don't have to look at the numbers, because in fact there's a very similar graph on the next page from the NCMEC in the US, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They are seeing the same thing over the same timeline, a big increase in the number of cases. And the National Crime Agency in April said that they've had a 266% increase in reports around this as an issue in the preceding 18 months. So it's not something that's affecting vast quantities of children, but it is an issue that is affecting all children. It is sophisticated. It's a criminal gang targeting young people for money. So it absolutely needs to be on our radar. There was an alert put out, maybe you saw that in April, by the National Crime Agency, an alert that went out to schools, and they partnered up with the Department for Education for England and working with the governments of the devolved nations as well to put those alerts out to schools. And the alert went out in a very practical, not looking to alarm people way, with useful resources that people could follow up with. So there was you can see on the screen, and you can still find this online, a parents and carers template letter. This is for schools to use to make sure that awareness is raised as we try and help better raise awareness and protect children from this. But that's not the only thing that has happened over this period of time. So there's been some other things there's some guidance for schools and colleges about the sharing of nudes and semi-nudes, which has been around for a few years, but that was updated and re-released at the beginning of this year to include reference to sextortion and generative AI, to make it more up to date, to include the issues which are relevant. So if you haven't you're not aware of that as a document, you can find that online at UK Council for Internet Safety. And it's got some really practical scenarios you can work through to think about at what moment do schools need to escalate to external agencies or not. And I think that's very practical advice in there. There have been some industry initiatives, and certainly we're seeing Snap and Instagram really they're recognizing that this is a problem on their platforms, and we're seeing also steps by other industry folk to try and provide on Instagram to try and provide prompts when they see that a nude image is being shared. They can give a prompt to the user: do you want to share this? Or if there's something incoming, to give a kind of a blurred image, this content is to give a warning, a sensitivity label, if you like, to people. So there's practical things which are done to help that in-moment education, which is really important. Obviously, much more needs to be done in that space. And there has been educational materials developed from NECMEC, a great video whose name's temporarily eluded me, the No Escape Room, and also from Childnet and the UKSIC for Internet Centre. And I know CEOP are also working on updating some content around this as an issue. So there is the opportunity to talk about this, and I'll touch on it again when I talk about Safer Internet Day. The key messages in the responsive messages, and you can find this in relation to the NCA advice, but it's effectively don't respond to the blackmailer. Paying money is not going to solve the problem. Save the evidence and report it. Report it to the service provider, if it's Instagram or Snapchat. Report it to the police. And there's a low awareness of these two services I put in the fourth bullet here about take it down or report remove. They're slightly different services, but they're both free, and they are for young people who are worried about an image of them that a naked image of them that they've shared, and they're worried it's going to be widely circulated. They can use these two services to help create a hash of these image, like a QR code, for want of a better description, that then service providers like Instagram, Snap can search their systems for this hash and prevent it from being uploaded. So it can help to reduce the spread of such images if young people have shared that, because that can be of something of huge concern to children and young people, to think that they have that hanging over them. Really important services, and there's not enough awareness about these tools that can help children at the current stage. And the other message is about not victim blaming, and we don't want young people to blame themselves. There is a lot of guilt and shame often associated with this type of behavior, and we really have to make sure that they recognize that they're not alone in this. This happens. They are the victim of a crime, and they need support, and we need to make sure that they recognize that, and we're absolutely emphasizing that. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead to talk about generative AI. And I think you're probably all aware what generative AI is, but on a very basic level, it's kind of it's technology which is often free, like ChatGPT, and I think that's the most commonly known one, where you can create content. Content can be created, and you can create text, images, sound, video. You can create anything using this technology, which will be derived from data that is out there, like the whole world of knowledge that this AI generator will be using to compute. But whatever it produces on request will look very much like it's been made by a human. I think that's my layman's interpretation of what Gen AI is. So it's an incredible tool, and we asked our young people. We have a youth advisory board. We were asking them about it, and I thought I'd just share some reflections that they had about this technology. And they absolutely said this technology is amazing. It's free, it's fun, it's fast. You can be creative. A couple of them said for education, it's really useful. They were saying that if you don't respond as well to a class dynamic, but you know what you're talking about in school, you can go to ChatGPT or a Gen AI engine and put in, explain this in simple language, and you can get you can get something like an educative tool which can be personalized and can be simplified, and it's incredibly powerful, and it's very useful. And we've had young people with special educational needs talking about how that was very valuable in their learning as a useful resource. But even outside of that, I've got a quote from a young person saying it's useful to posh up my emails when she's writing formally. It can be a tool to help her use that. So, writing job applications, all these other things got these positive uses. The negatives, absolutely, they listed those out. Number one that seemed to come up was, I think my peers at school are using it to cheat, and I don't think that my teachers are spotting the use of this, and I'm putting all this work in, and they seem to get rewarded for cutting corners. I think that's a thing. I think there's a worry about the lack of transparency in generative AI, and not being able to tell whether something has been created in that way or has been used to help create something. And there's an element of cynicism around creativity in young people, where they think that everything has probably got a bit of AI involved in it in some way. We did ask them, how do you tell if something has been generated by AI or not? And they said it was virtually impossible to do so. And they said for text, they said it was just, it was very difficult, and they were using their gut feeling to determine whether something was real or not, been created in that way. And for images, they were also finding that increasingly difficult. And some of the strategies they were using to tell whether an image was real or had been created was to look at the comments that were posted underneath it on social media to see what other people were thinking about whether this was a genuine image or not. And then one of the young persons said that she posts a lot, and she's often had some people commenting that they think that she is generated by AI. And so there's complications in that. And I think as the technology improves, we're going to have to recognize that the skill of determining that is going to become harder and harder. And that has obviously clear ramifications for young people and others. And then the last point I've got on this slide is about nudification. And certainly we've seen the Internet Watch Foundation issue warnings. This is the hotline rather, that's part of our UK Safer Internet Centre project, where the public can report illegal content. So if you're a member of the public and you stumble across child sexual abuse imagery online, you report to the IWF, and they can take steps to get the content taken down. They are starting to take reports of content that has been generated by AI. And then you can think about the implications that will have on a number of different areas, but one about the proliferation of such imagery. It still is illegal, even if it's been created by AI, but it allows for the proliferation and the ease of the creation of such content that is a real concern. But it also has another facet to that, and that is how it could be used in peer-on-peer abuse, online sexual harassment. And certainly the young people in our group were saying it just takes like a vendetta and a little bit of an internet stalk, and somebody can create nude images of you, even if you haven't shared any. So you're quite vulnerable. There's no safe side of the coin anymore. And that was clearly something that was making particularly girls in the group feel particularly vulnerable. And I think that's something I've really flagged that up as something that is starting to happen, and it's something that we just need to keep a careful eye on. We did some research all the way back in 2017 that you can see on this slide here, where we teamed up with NGOs in Hungary and Denmark to look at online sexual harassment amongst children and young people. And in the data we collected, and this is of teenagers, 45% of young people across the 3 countries, and it was almost identical in the 3 countries, have seen people editing photos of someone to make them sexual. And 7% have been victim of that. Clearly, that's 2017. Now the technology has made this much easier. We should absolutely expect for this to become an issue within school communities, in peer-on-peer online sexual harassment and bullying. But also, I think school staff can be targeted in this way. So there's lots of different ways in which people will be vulnerable. So it's to keep a ready eye on that as an issue. We have created, and there will be resources about tackling online sexual harassment in schools, and it's part of a project we did And here's an activity that we run. It's really designed to try and get young people to work out, well, what are the rules in relation to flirting online, and what's harassment and abuse, and where is the line crossed between those behaviors? Because there is no rule book, but we do need to be making sure we're supporting young people in that. So we give young people scenarios, and they have to post them on this line through discussion and work out where they see that line. It's a really valuable exercise. Now, I see I've only got a few minutes left, so I'm going to whiz on. Just very briefly, there is a crossover between Gen AI and sextortion, where people can use generative AI to blackmail others, and I think that's really significant as well. So it's not just on harassment; it can also be about extortion too. This very stark situation in the Childline report from August, where a young person didn't feel like they could tell their parents about it because the image looks so real, my parents wouldn't believe it was fake. So again, really emphasizing that the power of the technology and how vulnerable that can make young people. Now, in my last remaining couple of minutes, I wanted to come back to Safer Internet Day, which is a huge national opportunity for collaboration. It's going to be on the 11th of February. Hopefully you've got that marked in your diaries already, but if you haven't, please put it in. The web address you need to get involved in Safer Internet Day is there, saferinternetday.org.uk, and you can already find educational resources for 3 to 7s, 7 to 11s, 11 to 14s, and 14 to 18s, and translated into Welsh and to Irish, thanks to the Welsh Government and the Northern Ireland Safeguarding Board. Lots of content is there already. I really want to encourage all of you to think about what you can do to get involved and help amplify, because last time we had over 2,000 organizations and schools get involved, and it led to the messages reaching 52% of children and young people and 32% of parents and carers. So it's with your help, we can really get great reach. And if you look on that URL that I just gave you, there'll be education resources, quizzes, other content that you can use, however you communicate out, that can help you get involved, or you might have ideas about what you might want to do. I'll skip over that, but it's effectively saying that as well as the reach, we know the day has real impact too. So another kind of motivator to get involved. The theme this year is going to be on scams, protecting yourself, too good to be true, protecting yourself and others from scams online. This was as a result following consultation with children and young people, where they said that this was the area of their lives they wanted more support with. And so we are tackling this in its broadest sense. Scams in the way that young people see scams when they're being tricked. And that covers, somebody stealing your gems in games. And we've got absolutely that. It's talking about shopping and phishing and fake giveaways and all that type of thing. But it also allows us to talk about issues like sextortion, which is still exploitation and abuse, but the beginning of it starts financially motivated sextortion, starts as a trick, as a deception, and it's allowed us to include that in our education resources for the 11 to 14s and 14 to 18. So it's a good opportunity to talk about that subject with children and young people. There we are, educational materials, as guidance for educators, top tips, lots of content which is there and free to share. There'll be a social media hashtag Safer Internet Day. Look out for this great way to get involved and help support. And there's all this stuff which is available to you. So if you're not sure what to do, I think we've got lots of stuff that can help you, is my message. And there we are. I think I've rattled through it breakneck speed. I'm gonna stop there. And there's my email address, will@childnet.com. And the last quote is from a young person talking about how they would like someone to respond if they had a problem online, and that is react kindly, don't get cross, stay calm, make sure you know what to do if something goes wrong, so we can trust you can be able to help us. And the message is there for educators and parents and carers. Don't panic. We have to be ready to support however shocking the situation might seem. We just have to be ready to support, because young people are quite pioneering in this tech space, and we have to try and keep up as best we can.